When I got my first glimpse at the trailer for Stellar Blade, I thought to myself, this looks pretty cool. Then, after playing the demo, I was convinced that the game would be an absolute 10 out of 10. Was I right, or did this miss the mark? Let's get into my review of Stellar Blade after 70 hours of playtime. First off the bat, I'll say that I'm not going to get into the discourse that's been going around about the game. The only thing I'll say is I think people just need something to be mad about these days. First, microtransactions, then censorship. Anyway, enough of that. Stellar Blade is a hack and slash action RPG developed by Korean studio Shift Up and published by Sony as a PS5 exclusive. The story takes place in a post apocalyptic, not so distant future of Earth that is now mostly desolate wasteland overrun by an alien species known as the Naytiba. We, the players, play as Eve, a 7th Airborne Squad member from the surviving colonies tasked with reclaiming Earth from these formidable foes. Shift Up creates an interesting world in this sci fi setting to explore and discover secrets and the history of what occurred on Earth for players to meticulously explore. Diving deep into the lore and story overlays questions about what it means, in fact, to be human. Also, there are religious overtones here as we have two characters named Adam and Eve and a hub city named Zion. While playing the game, you'll be getting a lot of different vibes, such as Devil May Cry or Bayonetta style combat, Sekiro style, type perfect parry windows, and Near Automata, mainly for the soundtrack, which apparently was done by the same composer for that game. The story is pretty well done in Stellar Blade, although I felt certain parts were predictable at times, but maybe that's just me. I tend to predict what's going to happen with games, TV shows, and movies quite a bit. The gameplay is extremely solid in the game. There is immense satisfaction in getting perfect parries and dodges while in combat. You have a wide arsenal of special abilities at your disposal throughout the game as well. Not too far into the story, you'll also get access to a ranged weapon that opens up even more possibilities, and story progression will lead to unlock the other two skill trees in the game. The meshing of all three of these different options together creates extremely diverse combat. Veteran players of Souls or Souls like games will see the very light inspirations from the genre and will honestly coast through most of the game's bosses like I did. Once you've beaten the game, hard mode unlocks, but before then, if you wanted an extra challenge, you could use the skin suit, which negates Eve having a shield for damage absorption. I did have a couple gripes with the game, however. Number one, there was too much freedom of movement with Eve. There are some spots in the game where there is light platforming, and because there's so much freedom of movement, it made simple platforming more difficult than it really needed to be. Number two, I feel like there was too much bloat in the game. There are two open worldish type areas in the game, and this felt to me like they were out of place. I'm not sure if this was something Sony had the devs put in to extend the length of the game, but in my opinion, they should have gone with the quality over quantity approach. There were some repeat boss fights, which essentially are supposed to be souped up versions of the bosses you faced initially, which I typically am not a fan of. It's kind of like when games have you fight a boss and then later on you fight that boss again as a regular enemy, which in my opinion takes away from the boss experience. Boss fights were very well done. They should have, in my opinion, just kept the game on the shorter side and gone with the more linear level design the game had and not duplicated any bosses. Maybe that would have demanded a lower price point, so maybe Sony wanted to charge the full $70. I'm not really sure. The levels were linear, but it felt a lot bigger than what they actually were because of the verticality they had. You could use the scanner and see that there are ledges you can hop up and climb up and all that stuff. Not every action RPG has to be open world in some way, shape, or form. The fourth stripe I had, the side missions, in my opinion, were completely unnecessary and frankly kind of boring for the most part. It reminded me of the side quest from Code Vein. Go here and kill this monster, go here and check on this person. Oh, they're dead. Okay, mission complete. That sort of thing. Again, seemed to me like this was bloat in the game, and don't get me wrong, there were some side missions that had weight, such as the storyline for Sue and Enya. So there definitely were some side missions that gave you backstory on what has happened up until this point, or gave you perspective on the current state of the world. And lastly, there were some sections in the game where there were death traps and timed puzzles to open chests. As a visually handicapped player, I wasn't a big fan of these, but honestly, this is a small gripe. I mean, if they want to do stuff like that, they could, maybe put accessibility options in there. I mean, the game had good accessibility options, but maybe they could, put something in where you could do the puzzles like untimed or whatever. But that's just my opinion. An average playthrough of Stellar Blade will take about 30 hours, and for completionists like myself, I would say 50 hours plus. Upgrades and suits and tons of little goodies are hidden in nooks and crannies all over the world for you to spend time searching for and wondering how to get to. In terms of sound design, the game had incredible sound. The soundtrack was an absolute banger, and I found myself humming the tunes to myself on or off stream. Combat sounds of your blade cutting through flesh, getting perfect parries, perfect dodges, environmental sounds, and enemies were all extremely satisfying. Stellar Blade has definite replayability, especially since there are 3 separate endings, which with save scumming, you should be able to get 2 endings in one playthrough. Then you can rush through the second playthrough, which essentially what you need to do in order to acquire the third ending. The majority of trophies can be obtained in your first playthrough, and then New Game Plus offers new skills, new nano suits, and new abilities, in addition to unlocking hard mode after you complete the game for the first time. So going back to the question I posed at the beginning of the video, did Stellar Blade live up to the hype? The answer is yes, Stellar Blade was an absolute banger of a game. However, I felt it fell slightly short of a perfect 10 out of 10 for me. I would personally give the game a 9.5 out of 10 due to the gripes I mentioned previously. I think if the game would have stuck with the linear level design throughout the game and removed the 2 open worldish type areas, the game would have been, well, stellar. A perfect 10 out of 10. Like I said, yes, it would have been a much shorter game, but it would have been that quality over quantity approach. For the game to be this good though, and the developer doing primarily mobile games prior, speaks volumes on what we can expect to look forward from Shift Up. The quality of games that have come out of Korea recently have been absolutely phenomenal between this and Lies of P. What are your thoughts on the game? I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments, so let me know. That is going to be it for now, so hopefully you are all doing well. Stay tuned, more coming at you.